Acknowledgement of country. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands from which we're joining this conversation. We pay our respects to elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples joining us today.
I feel like there's a belonging that we have together as a group. So I think that we as human beings are desperate to belong. We want to belong. We want to be part of a tribe. We want to be part of a group. We want to be we want to belong. We want to have place. And
like I feel that sometimes with my parents, because we, again, like different generations, but that there's like something of an unspoken assumption maybe on behalf of my parents that I am maybe like more politically conservative than I actually am. Like I think that maybe they think that, or maybe they just kind of like don't look straight at it. But I'm not a politically conservative person anymore. Like I think I probably was once upon a time. And so anytime that arrives as a point of conversation, I kind of tactfully steer around it. And, I don't lob grenades like you do, but I might throw a couple of like curly ones in there at my parents, like,
with a desire to change the other person's mind rather than our willingness to accept and or just listen without having to, solve the problem, fix the situation so that we're all on the same page. Like, it's okay to, I feel like we've potentially lost our willingness to have a good argument. Like nothing wrong with a good argument.
Welcome to The Water Talks, a podcast by Pollination Media, where we like to sit in dimly lit spaces and talk about the big problems in the world. No, where we like to try and have conversations that maybe people aren't having, where we're trying to get to the topics that are hard to talk about, holding space open and creating room for more conversations and more growth as a society and the things that we need to hear, and shining a light on the places where maybe there's not enough light at the moment. I am Fred Ray, and I'm joined by Christine Parks. Welcome, Christine. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you're joining us from.
Good afternoon, and I am joining you from Bunyarong country in Melbourne Bayside, otherwise known as Black Rock.
Cool.
Thank you. Where are you?
I am on the banks of the Maribyrnong River.
You said it.
Yes, I got it. It's taken me a little bit. I've said Maribyrnong. I've said Maribyrnong. I've been around the world and how to say Maribyrnong. I finally got there. The banks of the mighty river. So I'm on, I believe, and I'm new to Melbourne, so I don't want to get this wrong, but I believe I'm on Wurundjeri country.
You are
part of the Eastern Kulin Nation. I'm learning quickly, and I'm a guest here, so it's lovely to be here. And what are we talking about today? Tell me.
I think we're going to have a conversation about why we're finding it hard to talk to each other. Why are we struggling with talking to one another about? Well, not even about. Why are we struggling to talk to one another from our hearts and our spirits?
Yeah, I'm curious if you're seeing that show up in the world anywhere in particular in this moment.
Yeah. I think I'm experiencing the difficulties with communication in that I've got a lot of friends, and then there's kind of cross and diverse opinions, thoughts, feelings about all sorts of things at the moment, because the world is a layered kind of joint, and the conversations that I'm realizing about myself, that I put a filter. So I put a filter across what it is that I am and am not allowed to say, depending on who the audience may be. So there are certain people that I feel that I can be really honest about everything from my thoughts, feelings, religious beliefs, political beliefs, my values. And then there are those people that I feel like I need to be careful with how I say what I say, when I say it, and the tone by which I say it, etc. For a whole range of reasons. But that, I don't know if that's new for me. Like, I feel like as I get older, I'm more conscious of my sometimes lack of filter, actually, because I kind of want to blurt it out. You know, I don't mind sort of throwing a bit of a hand grenade into the conversation, and seeing what happens, and, you know, seeing who ducks for cover, and seeing who, yeah, it's a tricky thing. But I think I'm also realizing how, you know, I come from a different generation. Like, it hadn't occurred to me that I'm, you know, that I it hadn't occurred to me that I'm an older person. It hadn't occurred to me.
Even with me talking about always being the youngest in the conversation and representing the under 35s.
Even with that, Ruby, I think I said earlier that Ruby she had a gathering the other night, and there was a whole lot of, you know, 20-somethings in my house, and I was busy being the old person washing the dishes and trying to clean up the kitchen so that in the morning I could have my poached egg with my cottage cheese and grilled tomato, without having to wade through glasses of just shit everywhere. And um, and they were like, "Christine, come sit down, come sit down. We want to come and sit with us, come and talk to us." So I sat down, and um, a few people were like, "Oh my God, careful, she'll give you feedback." Oh, careful, she'll give it. Oh, you know, it's fine. And I was like, yeah, yeah. No, oh my God, this is a new person in the group, right, that I hadn't met. And she's like, oh my God, I'm so excited that you love crystals, and you love, you know, astrology, and you love tarot readings, and you love all things kind of hippy dippy. This is so exciting. I could learn a lot from you. I could just and I was like, oh, yeah, yeah, I probably could learn a lot from you too. And then someone again from the other side of the table said, and I said, yeah, she went, oh my God, you're fabulous or something. And I said, yeah, everybody loves me until I give feedback. And then literally I don't know, there's maybe 8 people, 9 kids at this big table. And they're not kids, they're in their 20s, they're like adults. And they're going, don't ask for feedback. Don't ask for feedback. And she's like, no, give me feedback. I'm like, no, well, I'm not giving you feedback because I don't actually know you to give you feedback to. Like, give me some moments. We'll talk about it later. But yeah, so it's people. Oh yeah, so that's how I'm experiencing it. Because this is my whole new. I'm share housing now.
With your kids and 30 friends of kids.
Yeah, yeah. It's a share house. It's moved from parent child to share housing, and, you know, people going to your fridge and drinking your milk, sort of stuff.
It's interesting, and if you know, I think one of the questions that came up when we were doing some planning for the podcast was like, what are conversations that are not being had, and what are the conversations? Dear friend Madeline, who said this, and it's like stuck with me since, is what are the conversations that are not happening across generations? Like, what are the things that we aren't talking about? And you know, your point about feeling like you can't bring certain things up in certain settings. Like, I feel that sometimes with my parents, because we, again, like different generations, but that there's like something of an unspoken assumption maybe on behalf of my parents that I and maybe like more politically conservative than I actually am. Like, I think that maybe they think that, or maybe they're just kind of like don't look straight at it. But I'm not a politically conservative person anymore. Like I think I probably was once upon a time. And so anytime that arrives as a point of conversation, I kind of tactfully steer around it. And, I don't lob grenades like you do, but I might throw a couple of like curly ones in there at my parents, like, oh yeah, but like, geez, this is going to be a real curveball. Like, like, what was it? I'm trying to find tangible examples here. And I think Donald Trump featured a couple of times, and I had to like point out, like, yeah, but like, just randomly going to war with a country for 3 months is not exactly like a great idea, I don't think. And it's kind of like, yeah, and then it ends up steering out of it. And I wonder, is that part of our big disconnect at the moment, is that when like how we have hard conversations with our parents or across the generations, like especially like I was, taught for a long time, you don't necessarily question your elders. Like you take what you're given, and that's what you got.
Yeah, and in my generation, you did not talk about politics. You were not allowed to talk about politics. It was impolite to talk about religion or politics because it could be seen to be controversial. Yeah, look, I hear you, and I think with I have parents-in-law, my parents aren't around anymore, but certainly my parents-in-law are much more conservative than I am, and they they describe me as, "Oh, Chris, but you've always been very opinionated." Um, and they're they make the decisions that they make from their own perspectives. But they're fed a lot of information. So I think that information is the thing that probably gets in the way of the conversation. I think we tend to come at everything with a desire to change the other person's mind rather than our willingness to accept and or just listen without having to, solve the problem, fix the situation so that we're all on the same page. Like, it's okay to. I feel like we've potentially lost our willingness to have a good argument. Like, nothing wrong with a good argument, a great argument, a good debate, because I think it's healthy, but I also think it's the intention with which we set that conversation up. If the intention is to be kind and to be understanding and accepting and loving, then you can still disagree.
It's that's really interesting, and it reminds me of something I read or something I heard, and I feel like it was maybe around the last federal election, but it was about the nature of bipartisanship is changed, particularly in politics, and
Yep.
you want to talk about a place where you feel like people aren't having conversation, like Parliament House feels like one of them in Australia, and something that was sort of brought up as having changed was that once upon a time the ministers used to move to Canberra, and they would stay in Canberra, and they would live in Canberra, and their kids would go to the same school, and there would be barbecues on the weekends, and there would be Labor MPs, and there would be Liberal MPs, and there would be a Nationals MP, and there would be people, senators, that they were mixing and spending time together.
Is that a community?
Like that they were, kids at the same school, kids who are friends, stuff like that. And so they regardless of the fact that they had different opinions about how to do something,
Yep.
they were spending a lot of time seeing each other as humans. And so there was a higher level of cooperation. And now ministers tend to live, MPs tend to live in their electorates, and they fly in, fly out. Their families are still in their electorates, and they'll commute to Canberra for sitting weeks. And I'll have to find where I read about that, but it's, like such a interesting observation of like, we're not spending time with the other people. We're not, like, even before you get to like really listening to people, like, are we actually pushing ourselves further into echo chambers, disconnecting ourselves from people? And yeah, a friend of ours, Claire Baker, said to me end of last year, she made this observation about like the disconnection from community. When you're in community, like, you have to deal with people who have different opinions to you. Like, you live next door to your neighbor who just doesn't agree with you on something, but you have this common ground of, you live together, you have shared responsibility. So it's not the end of the world that you don't agree. But now, in a really hyper segmented world with the smartphones and social media and the amount of time that we're spending online and getting sucked into communities, finding communities that reinforce our own biases and our own values instead of challenging us, we're getting less and less interested in speaking to people across the divide.
You know what? And on the contrary, those of us who are embarking on self-inquiry and self-reflection are living in communities where we're quite happy with, the castle that we're building for ourselves, but we don't feel like our castle is in the right place. So that's interesting too, because, I live in a pretty conservative area of Melbourne, and Melbourne's very much, Melbourne can be a bit of an old boys club. Like, it can be very old moneyed. And that's certainly what we've, that environment is the environment that we talk about the divides. There's not a lot dividing. There's no divide, right? So everybody's upwardly mobile and entitled and capable of, paying our way through things. And I'm sure that I'm making a very broad statement because, of course, there's plenty of people. I'm sure that behind every closed door is a story. So I'm not suggesting that there's not. But certainly, certainly, I know that there are people who, as I've just discussed, I would find it really challenging to have conversations. I want to be able to, by the way. I might add, I really want to be able to say, I disagree, you know? There's a sentiment in Victoria, and as a guest, I'm just letting you know one part of it. But there is a real sentiment in Victoria around a sheer disdain. Oh, Victoria's gone to the shit. Victoria's in such bad shape. Oh
Yeah,
my
I've
God,
heard a lot of
Victoria.
that.
Yeah, yeah, and it's maybe I don't want to engage on that. But I do. I kind of go. There's a part of me that does a teenage eye roll. Like, I'm like, ah, yeah. Um. Oh, I've got to stop reverting to COVID, but it's such a great life lesson. So I promise, I'm just once in this
You
podcast.
can punch your little punch ticket's got like 2 more left, so
I'm
we'll
only going to
punch
do
it
it
and
twice
then
more.
yeah.
That's fine. I'm only going to do it once. Um. during that period of time, it was interesting to look at what was going on around conversation and politicization of what was going on at the time, and Victoria was shut down for a long period of time, and and yeah, there was a lot of commentary around that, and obviously globally there was a lot of commentary around it. People, blaming governments, being upset with people, being upset about this, that, and the rest, and I find that interesting because I think that's the flow-on effect of what we've got going on in Victoria as well. Like, we've kind of inherited somebody who's in charge that not everyone loves.
Mm.
So it wasn't a voting sort of situation. We just got this chick that people don't like. Um, um, but those sort of conversations, like the conversations about climate change with some of my more conservative friends, but the conversation wouldn't fly. It's just not a conversation they want to have. They want to have the conversation. Um, part of my family, farmers, they don't want to have a conversation about climate change either. They don't think it's real.
And so is it always that it's like a disbelief that it's real, or like is it not wanting to be in the discomfort? Like, what do you think's the driver for folks not wanting to talk about it?
I think it's both. I think it's the subject and the feeling associated with the subject. I think we've forgotten how to hold to be okay with the fact that someone's got a different opinion. I think that's the reality. It's the physical discomfort. It's like, oh my, and I actually think that there is. I also think that there is this exhaustion that's coming from outrage overload. So why have the conversation? I'm not even going to bother. I'm exhausted. I don't want to hear about it.
I'm curious if you think that we are missing a capacity for like vulnerability, maybe, because, and maybe it's also trust, but like vulnerable means like willing to sort of surface something, willing to be wrong, willing to have somebody sort of disagree with you. Like, I'm curious if that's something that's showing up in those, like, for those people that, I don't want to be wrong. That's uncomfortable. Like, I don't want to be vulnerable in this space and say, oh, like, I don't really disagree. I disagree because I don't. Yeah, I mean, maybe it is coming back to trust. Like, I don't trust that I'm going to be received in the right way. Like, I feel like you and I can have a conversation in which we disagree, and we have, because there's a large amount of trust here that even if we disagree, it's not going to end our friendship. It's not going to make for long, awkward silences. We're going to sit and hold the space for each other and ask questions and want to know more about it rather than just sort of shutting down. And do you think that that's playing into that inability to have conversation or to talk about hard things?
Yes. And I think it's that the trust comes from a sense of belonging. I feel like there's a belonging that we have together as a group. So I think that we as human beings are desperate to belong. We want to belong. We want to be part of a tribe. We want to be part of a group. We want to be we want to belong. We want to have place. And I feel like in that place of belonging, I can trust you with my feelings and my we've started the way we meant to proceed in our friendship through what we did with Small Giants and the process of learning with the MBE. Like in a very open, yes, and definitely vulnerable way. So, and we've managed, both of us, to come out the other side after having vastly different experiences, I might add, I'm sure. And yet, I would question whether I can't speak for your group, for your people, like, but I can speak for mine. And I could say that, yes, we're friends. We're good friends. I like, and I have old, and I've got old friends, that I've known for a long, long period of time. And I can be vulnerable with some of them. Others, I wouldn't ever put myself in a position of vulnerability for fear of being hurt and or misunderstood and or, kicked out of the tribe, like being ostracized out of the tribe. And I think that that's kind of what's helped me shape myself into this pretzel that I don't really want to be. Like, it's only now, but at my afternoon sunsetting age, that I'm willing to, not that I'm willing, that I'm just doing it. I'm actually being vulnerable. I'm choosing vulnerability. I'm choosing courage and choosing, regardless of what the potential outcome may be.
Do you think it would be
Mm.
easier to have those conversations with strangers?
Yep, for sure, 100%,
Mm.
100%.
And do you reckon that's common, like for folks?
Yeah, I reckon if we were to run an event and we had the four of us all sitting on a stage, and there was a whole, room of humans, and we were having a conversation, I think that it is much easier for me to feel to allow myself the vulnerability, and others. I think so, for sure. Anonymity is an amazing thing.
Yeah, but I think it's almost not anonymity. And I'm sitting in that question as I like listen to your response of like, would I find it easier to talk to strangers about something contentious?
Would you?
I, I'm not sure. Like, I think probably not. I think I would probably find it pretty easy and what I'm like, the point of the question was, what I'd love to understand is, is part of this breakdown in discourse, like how we like think we're being perceived in our, like you said, like in our tribes and in our social circles, and we're worried about what that'll do to our social standing. I mean, one of the things that happened in 2016 in the first Trump election, polls had Trump like as a pretty big outsider to win that election.
Yep.
Because people were going to the polls, like people were being polled. Firstly, like polls are obviously only small snippets, and they do all the fancy modeling to make it sort of representative of a population. But people were being asked whether they would vote for him, and they were not saying that they would do that, but were going to the polls and voting for Donald Trump, right? Like,
Privately. Yep.
yeah, because they didn't want to talk about it. They weren't being open. They didn't feel like they could be open about it. And so, yeah, it's kind of curious to me of whether what that is that we're worried about, and whether it's that maybe, even the discourse around us that is polarizing. We're sitting in the middle right now of this huge One Nation surge in the polls in Australia, which feels crazy. Like to be looking at a poll that says that One Nation is on par with the Labor Party or just behind the Labor Party in a two-party preferred thing, and we're a long way from the election, which is also like plays into the accuracy of polls and things. But the breakdown in the discourse, is that fueling us? Like, is the radicalization of the discourse forcing us to not want to talk about it, or is it because we don't want to talk about it that it's getting sort of further and further separated?
Yeah, I think both and. I think both. I think I feel like we are unwilling to really get up close to stuff, like really and hold it and look at it and and feel it and speak it and share it because it's the storytelling, right? It's all about storytelling. At the end of the day, everything is a story. So yeah, I mean, for me, this One Nation, thing is completely bizarre for a whole range of reasons. Um, but I think that if we take our, I don't know, our original conversation, which is why people are not wanting to talk to each other. Why? Um, I think that the benefit of doing what we're doing in having a conversation about these things is the ability for us to then invite other people into the conversation, and know that it's okay to have the conversation regardless. Like, yeah, like I've got yeah. So and I think it's a tricky space to be, and one I think we should explore more. I actually think that we should look at doing a longer podcast on this. I think, but for now, this is it, and I think we've got to thank the people for coming and listening. And I think
Yeah, and maybe inviting some theories in the comments if you're,
some
or reflections.
questions.
Yeah, like if you are experiencing this, or you maybe are in a situation where you don't feel like you're able to speak really freely or engage with conversations with the people who are closest to you or people in your circles, like what you're hearing and feeling. And because I mean, again, like I don't think that any of our conversations are supposed to be closed. So this is only an opening on this, and making sense of it is, yeah, sharing stories and wanting to hear from more people and wanting to hear what the experiences are as they play out in real time.
Yeah, I think that would be wonderful. So we invite anybody, anyone who's subscribing to us, to drop some questions in. I'd love for us to be able to have conversations, and perhaps we can look at even doing a podcast in the future that has people in real time phoning or sending in text, text questions. But one thing at a time.
Yeah.
Thank you from Pollination Media.
Yeah. Smash the subscribe button, like it, tell your friends, share. And we'll see you next
Yeah.
time.
See you. Bye.